It's the first episode, and in true Belinda fashion, I forgot to record this part of it, which is great. But I really am so grateful for anybody who's coming in to listen now. We're going to be talking about Sabine Schmitz today, an absolute icon, an absolute legend when we look at motorsport history. And I think her story just resonates with so many people. So thank you so much for supporting this very first episode. And of course, I am the silly one who forgot to record it, so you get me in my hair towel. No shame. Anywho, let's get on with it and enjoy. She was crowned the Queen of the Nürburgring, but her story is not just about performance and precision and how far she could go. It was also about a genuine person who was loved by many and known for her wonderful personality, laughter, and humour. I'm talking about the late Sabine Schmitz today, and I want to introduce her for those who don't know who she is, but also reminisce for those of you who are fond of her, who loved her work, and who celebrated her, whether it was from her early days around the Nürburgring as a ring taxi driver, or it was years later as she was on Top Gear with the likes of Jeremy Clarkson. I'm Belinda, and I cover stories of incredible women across the automotive and the motorsport space, celebrating innovation and the incredible work that they have done to help us get where we are today. And as many of you will attest to, Sabine feels like the perfect person to start the very first podcast off with, especially because she is so loved by many across our industry. So without further ado, let's get into it. So we're talking about someone today who didn't just race, she actually became an integral part of the motorsport legacy and history. And there are so many people out there, I'd say thousands, hundreds, millions, who know her name. And while I'm using obviously her reference in the past tense, she's no longer with us, her story is so incredible. I think it inspires millions of people the world over. So who was Sabine Schmitz? Well, Sabine was a German racing driver born on the 14th of May 1969, and she's best known for her mastery of the Nürburgring Nordschleife. And to many, she, as I said, wasn't really just a driver. She embodied the Nürburgring. And for those of you who don't know, it's a huge circuit in Germany where you have quite a lot of variation in terms of the corners, the opportunities for overtaking, and there are parts of it that are pretty much known as the green hell. You have to be really confident when driving the Nürburgring, particularly if you go at speed. So she grew up in Adenau, which is a small town in the region of High Eifel in Germany. And if you look at the Nürburgring map, you can actually see Adenau not too far from the circuit. So you get my gist when I say she really grew up around it. And of course, growing up in the 70s and 80s near the Nürburgring, Sabine was pretty much encased by motorsport culture, and her family ran a hotel that would regularly house racing drivers, motorsport teams, fans, and people on their way to the Nürburgring. So it wasn't just a case of living near it. Of course, she had a lot of people as influence to come and be near it, be around it. She'd obviously hear the stories from people, perhaps if they were having dinner or checking into the hotel or coming in after a day of being at the track. And just hearing the exhilaration in their voices, the stories that they might tell, I could imagine for someone like Sabine, knowing her as we do today, she would have been really captivated by that. And it feels quite magical to think of that. Now, I've already mentioned a lot about Sabine's growing up and the culture she was in and the people around her. But a lot of people are quite shocked to know that she didn't really start in like the traditional karting route or anything like that. In fact, her and her sisters pretty much all decided to have a go at racing, and they'd done a couple of trips around the Nürburgring prior in a family car, so they were familiar with it, but there wasn't the obsession, I suppose, we could say, as we know there is now. So before her professional racing career really began and kicked off, of course she supported her family in the family business, which was the hotel I mentioned earlier, Hotel am Tiergarten, which was near the Nürburgring. She trained in hospitality, and there was potentially an expectation, as many parents have, that she could support or take over the family business. So she obviously was able to talk to a lot of the people, whether they were visiting the Nürburgring or just the local area, and get their stories, listen to them. But whilst there's not necessarily a clear karting pathway into motorsport for Sabine, there is another pathway, and that's actually through the Nürburgring itself. So she began competing in local races on the circuit, which included events that were part of the Nürburgring endurance racing scene, what's now known as the Nürburgring Endurance Series. And she also competed in VLN races, which is a championship built around long distance racing on the Nordschleife. And essentially that's where she developed her skills, that's where she came to know more and more of the track, that's where she came to understand the complexity of the Nürburgring and the Nordschleife, and that's ultimately how she came to master it, how she came to become the queen of the Nürburgring. Now, endurance races are not short. If you're not familiar with what an endurance race is, it is essentially hours and hours of racing where you may take it in turns to swap over the driver's seat in order to get around the circuit, and you'll have to do it. So for example, one of the most famous is the 24 hours of Le Mans or the 24 hours of the Nürburgring, where teams will race, and it's all part of endurance to see who can get through to the finish line, who can win, and who can ultimately come on top. So it's not a quick few laps around the Nürburgring. This is some serious stuff. So not only was she having to ensure she stays on top of her time, she's constantly having to adjust to the traffic that's on the Nürburgring at the same time. With an endurance race, it sounds obvious, but I'll say it anyway. You are competing with other people on that track, so you have to navigate them. You have to navigate the traffic. You have to understand the risks coming up, sometimes before you can even see them. And there's even areas of the Nordschleife and the Nürburgring that are so hairy and dangerous, you really have to remain focused. And that is some of the incredible skill that Sabine honed. And of course, you have to maintain your consistency over long periods of time. You train your body to be used to that speed, to be used to the G-force, to be used to not using the toilet, not having a drink, not having any food. It's physical work, and a lot of people can often dismiss it and think it's quite easy, but you really have to train your body to go through it. But by the mid-90s, Sabine was a regular around the Nürburgring, so by the time 1996 rolls around and she wins the 24 hours of the Nürburgring, and then by the time 1997 comes around and she wins it again, you can see just how much time, effort and energy she's had to put in to knowing and understanding this very complex course and circuit. Now, in 1996, she won the 24 hours of the Nürburgring in a BMW M3, which is one of the cars, I'd say, and the M5, a real highlight if you look at the span of her career, particularly when you look at her ring taxi days and she's in the M5 taking people around the Nürburgring. But after the 1996 and the 1997 wins, it didn't stop there. It didn't stop there for her. In 1998, she then went on to win the VLN Endurance Championship. And I just can't even explain and express how she managed to go from the hospitality that she did at her parents', her family's hotel, to then being the winner 2 times over of such a cruel and challenging endurance race. It's insane, honestly, it's insane. If these stories excite you, why not head to my website, belinda-automotive.co.uk. So, obviously Sabine had a real close connection to the Nürburgring. But for many people, their first introduction to Sabine wasn't through the 24 hours or endurance racing, but through Top Gear, which is a British television show that at the time was hosted by Jeremy Clarkson, James May and Richard Hammond. So essentially they are big characters in the automotive and motorsport space within the UK. In the early 2000s, it was somewhere that a lot of the automotive fans really gravitated to. And when you had specific things like the Stig come in, like you had the lap time challenges, when you had the car comparisons, the reviews, it was just a completely different way of looking at automotive. So for many people that were already hooked to the screens of Top Gear, actually this was one of their first introductions to Sabine. And many of my followers have said that exact thing, that they weren't familiar of her until that point. So her expansion and her notoriety obviously grew. Now, she had several appearances on the show, and one of the most notable appearances, it was based around the Nürburgring, and Jeremy Clarkson, I believe, was driving a Jaguar S-Type, and they were racing each other around the Nürburgring and doing lap times. He did it just under 10 minutes, I believe, to do the full thing in a Jaguar S-Type diesel. And Sabine didn't just sit there and go, well done. She went, I bet I could beat you in a van. And it shows just the kind of person that Sabine was, because she's also known for having done a lot of these track sessions and days and daily drivers. So she'd know how to handle those corners, those tight parts, the changing conditions in a van. Let's be honest. So, of course, they have this big competition between them. I think he gets in under 10 minutes. And then she gets to a point where she's like, right, in the Ford Transit, I think it was. And she's going around the Nürburgring. And she is so close to beating his lap time. And I think it was less than 10 seconds she went over. But to do the Nürburgring in a van and only be so shy off that S-Type is insane. But it shows you the level of skill that she had to do that, and the level of humour as well behind her, because, you know, she just went and challenged it. She just did it. Nothing held her back. And I think that's one of the things that we can certainly take from Sabine. She just did it. She just got behind the wheel of that van and she just did it. And although she's had multiple television appearances, not just Top Gear, she also kept that love up for motorsport in general. She co-founded the Frikadelli Racing alongside Klaus Arbelin, her husband, running endurance cars including the Porsche 911 GT3, stunning. She didn't step away from driving despite co-founding Frikadelli. She kept doing it. Like, why stop doing something you love? Do you know what I mean? And she just kept going. She just kept enjoying the things that she loved. She kept enjoying life. And she kept racing into the 2010s, being a driver, being a team player, being a supporter, being a business person. And of course, she continued the BMW ring taxi, something she is well known for, well loved for. And there was a chance that if you went to the Nürburgring, you might catch a glimpse of her. Which again, it probably extended that line out of the door for people who wanted to sit passenger with her. And of course, I think this part of her life, as we get towards the end of it, is the part where we just see her flourish. Everything she's achieved, she doesn't take it for granted, and she fully embraces it. And I think there's so many lessons that we can get from Sabine about trying the thing that you love, knowing that you may be training as a hospitality manager, but you try for a different career in racing. I mean, they're two different things completely. Even it's making a name for yourself in your hometown, but globally through the thing that you love, pursuing the thing that you love every day, surrounding yourselves with the things that you love. I think there's so many lessons that we can get from Sabine.
If you love content like this
but you just need it a bit shorter. I'm across all your favourite social media platforms, so simply search Belinda Automotive and you'll find so many other stories that I've already covered. By now it should be so clear that Sabine's career wasn't a straight line, it wasn't straightforward by any means, and actually it was a lot of learning what was right, making mistakes, but ultimately enjoying what she does. The other thing that her career was built on was reputation, and that was namely because she completed thousands and thousands and thousands of laps on the Nürburgring, Nordschleife. And in fact, when you had somebody with such an impressive driving skill, you would probably be a little bit shocked if they didn't have that. You know, you'd expect that from somebody so established, so professional as Sabine, to be just incredibly capable and appreciative of all of the complexities that the Nordschleife and the Nürburgring had to offer. Now, the Nürburgring itself is over 20 kilometres long, has around 150 corners, and there are sections of it that are pretty much known as the Green Hell. And they're not straightforward tracks. And it's Germany as well. Weather conditions change all the time. The conditions on the track can change. There can be more traffic in one place, hardly anybody in another, and you just have to adapt based on what's around you and what's in your vicinity, really. And that's what Sabine learnt to do. And I suppose it was a little bit like clockwork for her, because she knew when there might be less grip during the wet, or where you may need to brace for a corner quicker, or where most of the accidents would happen, and she would take that in her stride and use it, especially when she did the BMW ring taxi days, showing people around where people would be passengers with her. I think one of my followers said at one point in time there was a significant waiting list if you specifically wanted Sabine as your driver, whereas if you were happy to have anybody, it would be about a 2-week. So it just kind of said how much she was looked up to, particularly by motorsport fans. Now, one of the most recognised cars that she actually used with the BMW ring taxi was the BMW M5. And on its own, it's pretty much a machine. But with someone like Sabine handling it, I can only imagine the absolute thrill that her passengers would have as they were going around the Nürburgring. Now, this is a car that's got really interesting handling. It's obviously designed for the motor racing, for BMW M models. The M pretty much indicates that it is motorsport led. It's got a legacy. The horsepower on it as well, it's not packing a little punch. It would have been quite a significant fun car to drive. And in fact, when you had somebody with such an impressive driving skill, you know, you'd expect that from somebody so established, so professional as Sabine, to be just incredibly capable and appreciative of all of the complexities that the Nordschleife and the Nürburgring had to offer. And that's what Sabine learnt to do. Now, sadly, in 2021, Sabine passed away at the young age of 51 after a time battling cancer. And the response to her death was immediate across motorsport fans across the world. And it was even sad for me to cover her first and foremost on my channel, for people to say that they didn't know that she had passed. So she is so well loved across the world that even now, which would be 5 years on from her passing, people still feel the love they have for her and the deep sadness at her loss, but the acknowledgement that actually her legacy is incredible and she's done amazing things. And her legacy at the Nürburgring is obviously something that they haven't gotten rid of. Like, so many people that go there feel the essence of what she left, the legacy that she left. But also, they named one of the corners after her, which was the Sabine Schmitz curve. And honestly, what an incredible celebration of her life for people to go and honour her, but do the things that she loved doing too, you know? And for them to pass that corner and to think of her, it's just incredible. And knowing that she united fans across the world, you know, she united them through humour, through her incredible talent, and, you know, through what she has done, not just for motorsport, but for women in the sport too. So stories like Sabine's are so important for us all today, and especially as we reflect on her life, you know, many of the stories and many of the people I will cover are still with us. But it's so important to tell the stories of those who aren't. Whether this is the first time you're experiencing Sabine's story, you're a long-time fan of hers, or even if you're just getting into the world of motorsport and you're looking into this, her story celebrates exactly what it means for women in automotive, but also to experience that legacy on the Nürburgring. So I'll be digging into more of these stories on my podcast, The Road Is Ours, and I look forward to any suggestions that you might have. You know, feel free to write in or put a comment below, whatever's easiest, of somebody you'd like me to cover in more detail, like Sabine. Let's celebrate these people. Let's celebrate the incredible talent that we've got across motorsport and automotive, because why not? Look after yourselves and remember that the road is ours.